Okay, so what we're gonna do, we're gonna start, so it's consumer mathematics, okay? It's gonna be, going to the bank and getting a loan. We're gonna have a page where we kind of just define all the different vocabulary words. We're gonna do compound interest, simple interest. We'll have a section where we talk about buying homes. Like, it's literally like real math examples, okay? For 10.1, just entitled percents. Okay. Now, percent means, it means per 100. Okay. And in math, per means divide. And then we just have this little extra sentence right here to really understand that a percent is a ratio of some number x to 100. And that actually can be represented like this. So ratio, when you think of ratio, you should think of like a fraction, right? And then we just said that per means divide. And so when you do a percent, it means like divide by 100. Percent per 100 divide by 100. So a percent is a ratio of some number x to 100. And if we did have something that we put over 100, in doing so, we would end up getting that value as a percent. So I'm just using the variable x because it could just be anything. Okay. Now we have these different examples right here. In my first class, I was wishing I kind of did some more examples. I didn't have time to print up homework, so I might come up with a random one or two just to throw on here. So y'all have a few more. And then if you're doing the homework and you see one that I didn't cover and it's confusing, just tell me, okay? Let's talk about going from a fraction to a decimal. Okay. Now, the example that they gave me that I used earlier was 67 over 100. So I'm going to go ahead and use that one again. I will create kind of a different one. So this is a fraction. I'm going to use a TI-30XS multi-view calculator. I just love this calculator so much. Okay, I always just clear. You can do it one of two ways. You could take your numerator, just type 67. The divided by comes from the fraction bar because this is read 67 divided by 100. You can type your 100 and you can hit enter. And if you notice, there's the glare, that's a decimal, right? If you take something and you divide it by 100, essentially what it does is it moves your decimal place over. So this is a whole number 67, okay? It's implied that the decimal is after the 7. Dividing by 100 moves your decimal 2 times to the left. That's how you go from into a decimal, is move your decimal 2 times to the left. Now, this would just be 0.67. Now, with this calculator, there's also a button. It is 1, 2, 3 buttons above the number 7, and it says N over D. Okay, that's numerator over denominator. I am seeing a fraction. I can actually type this fraction button, type 67, go down, and type 100. Now it literally looks exactly like the problem that I have, right? Now the thing is, since I typed that fraction button, when I hit enter, well, I hit it 2 times, I didn't mean to do that. When I hit enter, this one actually can't be reduced into a smaller fraction. But what I noticed is I have a button above my enter, and it technically just kind of converts from fraction to decimal, from fraction to decimal. So if I have a fraction and I want to show a decimal, I can just type in my fraction and hit the button, that converts it to a decimal. And you get the same thing there, right? So there's just multiple different ways that you can go about it, okay? Let's do this example right here, just so it's not 1 over 100. My two favorite numbers are 6 and 13. I'm gonna do 6/13. I'm probably do one more example because I do want one that's gonna reduce. 6 over 13 is not gonna reduce because 13 is prime. But again, 6, I know that the fraction bar means divided by. 6 divided by 13, and it actually gives me the decimal. Okay, if you use that N over D button, it's gonna try to reduce it, but it's gonna stay as a fraction. Well, I don't want a fraction, I want a decimal. So let me hit that button that converts it. You get the same exact thing there, okay? Now, on the homework, it will tell you to round things. We're gonna round this one to the tenths. Let's do the hundredths place. So I have 0.4615. I just write a couple numbers. The tenths place is the very first place after the decimal, and then it goes hundredths, and then thousandths, and then 10,000ths. If my homework tells me to round to the hundredths, that would be, I'm looking to see what's going to happen to the 6. The one that determines what happens is the one right next door to it. If it is between 0 to 4, the number you have underlined just stays the same. If it's 5 to 9, you're going to add 1 to the number you've underlined. 5 to 9 is what I'm looking for, and what I have is a 1. So that just says that I stay. So this being rounded, and usually if something's rounded, you might do like it's a squiggly equal sign because it's approximately. We have 0.46. Okay, and then I want one that I can put as a fraction, and my calculator actually reduces it. So let's do something like 24 over 36. I just know that those are similar numbers. 24 over 36, okay? And this is a fraction, and I want to go to a decimal, and I like this N over D button, so I'm going to use it, and that way it looks just like my problem. I hit enter. Okay, this says 2/3, so that means that they did have common factors. It could be reduced, but I want a decimal. I hit the button to change it, and I get 0.66666. It just keeps going. I'm also going to round this one to the hundredths place, which means I'm looking at the number right next to it. This number is greater than 5, so what I do is I add 1 to the one that's being underlined, and if I add 1 to 6, it becomes 7. I know this is very simple, and I need it to be simple because this is like definitely not going to be a part of the future problems and the formulas that I want to confuse y'all at all. If there's any rounding or converting from this to this or that to whatever, okay? So that's kind of going from a fraction to a decimal. Now what we're gonna do is we're gonna go from a decimal to a percent. I'm actually gonna go and change pages, y'all, okay? Whoop. Let's go from a decimal to a percent. And then we're going to go from a percent to a decimal, which they're kind of inverse operations of each other. But they're going to be the main ones that we do. Oh, I lied to you. Let me do a problem 4. I do want to go from a fraction. No, I'm going to add that one here. There's one specifically I know we're going to see today, and I want to just make sure I explain it, but I'm going to add it right here. I'm going to put an asterisk so I don't forget. Okay. Decimal to percent. Okay, so for this first example, say we have 0.0875. That is a decimal, and I want to write it as a percent. So there's 2 different things we could do. One of the things that we could do, if we have a decimal, we want to write it in a percent, is we can multiply by 100. Or what we could do is we can move decimal 2 times to the right. Going from a decimal to percent means that you're getting larger, and that's why we would move it to the right, because we're going to make that number larger. If we go the other way, we'd actually move it to the left, which we'll do in a second. But I would like to get my calculator, and I could clear, and I could just type this whole entire number the way it is. You don't even really have to worry about using that N over D button. I just wanted to show y'all that it's there. If we do 0.0875, and it told me that what I could do is multiply it by 100, I get 8.75. Now the thing is, as an answer, what I did was I just changed this to a percent. So it's not an actual percent unless you add the percent symbol. And then I'm hoping it makes...
I'm not sure I understand.
Okay, well, I'll keep explaining it, Siri. Okay, so on the second option that we had, move the decimal 2 times to the right, hopefully it makes sense. This is where my decimal is, and if I moved it 2 times by hand, I end up right in the middle of the 8 and the 7. I would just place it right there the way this is, and just don't drop your 5, okay? Unless it tells you to round, obviously. Okay. Decimal to percent. That's really the only example I could think of. Just multiply by 100 or move your decimal. Now let's do percent to decimal. Okay, I'm going to do like 2 examples here. For the first example, say we have 69.8%, and it wants us to change this to a decimal. So what I do is, because this is 0.8, all I have to do here is just drop the percent symbol. Okay, and the way I go from percent to decimal is the opposite way that I went from decimal to percent. So here I multiplied. Here I divide by 100. Or we also have the ability to move decimal 2 times to the left. Okay, so I like my calculator. I want to divide this by 100. I do 6.98. I don't need to do anything with the percent because I'm essentially going to drop it. And I divide by 100. And if you notice, what that ended up doing is it took that decimal and it moved it 2 times to the left, which added a 0 in front of the 6. And there's your decimal right there. So this is actually 0. What'd I do? Oh, look, sorry, I was like, hold on, this isn't right. Y'all, 69.8, look what I typed in, 6.98. And even that right there would throw a whole entire problem off, okay? Because these are the little bitty works that you gotta do before you go into the formula. So definitely double check your work. 69.8, and then divide by 100. That's 0.698. Once I saw that 0, I was like, hold on a minute. Okay, so that's dropping it, dividing it by 100 in my calculator. The other option is to just grab that decimal, move it 2 times to the left, and you no longer use the percent symbol. Okay, now let's do this example right here. Say we have 3 and 1/4%. There's multiple ways you can go with this as well. Okay, 3 and 1/4%. The first thing you would do here, since we see that fraction and we don't see something like with a decimal, you don't just drop your percent. Okay, we're gonna have to, that's kind of gonna come at the end. what we would do is you can, if you read it as 3 and 1/4, that and is like addition, okay? So you can actually add these in your calculator. Those are two different things here. 3 and then you could do the n over d. That's 1/4. That gives you something in a fractional form, and then you can convert it into a decimal. And this 3.25, that's still percent. The percent with when you have a fraction involved comes at the end, okay? Or what you can do is just look at your fraction. 1 divided by 4, that's 0.25. Add it to your whole number, 3.25. There's all different kinds of ways that you could see this. You could turn this into an improper fraction. Does anybody remember how to do that? Yeah? You do 4 times 3 and then you add the 1. Did you see, wouldn't you get 12 plus 1 is 13 over 4? When I did 3 plus 1/4, I got 13 over 4. So putting it in your calculator that way turns it into an improper, and then you just hit that convert button to go into a decimal. Okay, so there's like so much that we could like right there. So what we're gonna do when you see something like this, we can add whole and fraction. Then after we add the whole and the fraction, we drop the percent and divide by 100. So that's all kind of one thing there. Or you can turn into improper and go from a fraction to a decimal. I really want it to make sense that 1 over 4, that's a quarter. So you're really just gonna do 3.25. I don't see them giving you anything, like maybe 1/2, right? I don't see them giving you like 5/8, where like people don't really know what 5/8 is off the top of their head. So there's all different things that you could do there. I like the adding them together and then dropping and dividing by 100. When you use your calculator, what it does is it turns it into an improper if you don't know how to do it by hand. So these are similar. I am gonna clear. So I do 3 and, okay, second mode takes me back to the bottom. 3 and, n over d is 1 over 4. Hitting that n over d, the moment I put that fraction symbol in something that I'm computing, it gives me my answer in that fraction symbol, okay? So I'm actually doing this part more closely. 13 over 4, convert, 3.25. So what I have right here is that this is equal to 3.25. I could have kept it in the fraction of decimal, but I wanted to do it this way. I haven't done anything with that percent symbol at all, right? 3 1/4%, 3 1/4%. All I did was just convert the fraction into its decimal version. Now, drop the percent, divide by 100, or move your decimal. But if you have 3.25 in your calculator, can't I just divide by 100 right here? 0.0325. I know me, and I know that I use more words than needed sometimes, and I'm trying to show you 2 different ways just in case. You do whatever way makes the most sense to you, okay? Now, something that I would write on maybe like a note card for the test, because this is like the main one, going from percent to decimal or decimal into percent. Each time we use 100, percent to decimal, what we do is we divide, and then decimal to percent, what we do is we multiply. Okay, that little bitty thing right there on a note card, and you're like, okay, this is a percent, I want to go to the decimal, I'm going to divide by 100. Okay, this is an actual decimal, but I need that percent at the end of it. I need it to change. I'm going to multiply by 100. Anything like that. would obviously be very useful on a test, okay? Okay. Now let's talk about percent change. So that was 10.1. Okay, that's all of 10.1. That's one of your homeworks.